Failing wasn't a card. It wasn't in the cards. But after about 2 years of a grind, an unbelievable grind, the phone started to ring off the hook. He says, I would like you to bring some of it with a couple salads to my office at Costco. And we were making this stuff, in little bar blenders, I hired this guy named Joe. He was the only guy ever. He wore a suit to the interview. But there's a period of 2 years missing here. What happened in those 2 years? I served 2 years in the penitentiary. He said for money laundering and fraud. And after a while, I would say 3/4 of the people that came through the door asked for Joe. And this guy, Joe, started asking me if I would sell the business to him.
Welcome to Entrepreneur Success Stories. I'm Jimbo, Senior Market Advisor, Old Wise Ones, longtime entrepreneur, and host of the program. Today we have a special guest. Please welcome Mark Schneider.
Hi, thank you very much.
Well, it's nice to have you. You've been a serial entrepreneur or a longtime entrepreneur or lifetime entrepreneur.
I have.
We just started talking off camera about when you started. Tell me about your very first, was it a shoe shine?
Well, actually, I think I was cleaning my dad's liquor store was my first one.
Yeah, did he pay you to do it?
He paid me, yes, he did.
Oh, good for him.
I think I was 6 years old.
Where were you raised?
City of Commerce.
Okay, right now. Okay.
And he had me come in there, clean that store, sweep it up, clean all the bottles, move all the bottles.
That's when the glass bottles were glass bottles, right?
Absolutely. I think my second one, or maybe even the same time, I was shining shoes. I lived in LA, and it was a pretty busy area, a lot of traffic. So there were people sitting on bus stations, and I would go there with my shoe shining equipment and ask people if they...
Who taught you to do that? Where'd you get the idea?
I just thought it can't be that hard. I bought myself a box with all the little tools and brushes and paints. And
how'd you come up with pricing? How'd you know what to charge? Even? You remember?
I don't even remember.
Yeah. So you just tried something until somebody wouldn't pay anymore, and then that's where you stopped, right, with the pricing?
Something like that.
How about $10? How about $1?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, back then, right?
$1.
$1 was a lot. You're pretty close to my age. My assumption is that your parents went through the Depression era.
Yes.
So they had that Depression era, what I would call fiscal responsibility. That was before any of the safety net stuff, any of the social safety nets or anything else. And people were losing jobs, and having a job was critical, and being able to make money was critical. And what I remember about those years is my dad never was bought anything on time. If you couldn't afford it, you couldn't buy it. You valued work. You valued going out and making money.
Absolutely.
Is that kind of how you were raised too?
Absolutely. In fact, even when I had my own restaurant and business with 35 employees, I was so happy to have a job. I owned the business, but I was so happy to have a job. And I've always felt that way.
Well, let's go back to age 6, okay? So now you're growing up in L.A. What high school did you go to in L.A.?
Hamilton High School.
Hamilton High, okay. Then college?
University of Hawaii.
University of Hawaii, okay. Yes. And you went there with the idea of being what?
I think I went to college more because it was the right thing to do. I didn't have a definite goal. I didn't know if I wanted to be an accountant or a sociologist.
Wasn't sure.
Okay. Wasn't sure. So it was just
the parents kind of expected you to go to college?
Exactly. So there was no choice for me.
Yeah,
I had to go to college.
Mine either.
Okay. You have to be a doctor or a lawyer, or nothing else matters.
Any of those ring a bell to you when they were telling you that's what you were going to do?
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
I was a finance major at SC, and my dad, said go to work for IBM and Xerox. And when I went to the interviews, I went, I don't want to do this.
I know.
A little late.
So
what did you graduate with? What was your degree?
I was actually more interested in business, but I thought that I wanted to help people. That was another thing that I wanted to do. And so I took sociology classes with the intention of becoming a social worker.
Counselor of some sort and helping people.
Yeah. So I got my degree in sociology with a minor in business. And then I went to USC, believe it or not.
You went to University of Spoiled Children, just like I did.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, University of Southern California. We don't want to.
Right. I went there for my master's in social work.
So you were serious about being a counselor at that point. If you're going to go to grad school.
I was very serious about that. But at the same time, I was working and managing restaurants. So I was doing both.
Oh, so you got your first kind of intro to restaurants where?
In high school as a busboy, not too far from my house. I got another job a couple of years later being a cook, and I graduated. And then after high school and I went to college, I got a job there at Chuck's Steakhouse being a cook. I learned everything. I mean, I waited tables, I tended bar, I was a cook. Then when I graduated, came back to the mainland, back to California. Someone asked me to manage a restaurant, Scotch and Sirloin, on Sepulveda and Pico. And so I managed that.
So from a management standpoint, so you were kind of the hiring and firing and making sure everything happened right. So now you're not at the worker level, you're at the almost owner level or top level.
Pretty close. One thing led to another. I was going to graduate school, but I was also being pulled into the restaurant management, and I had partners that were interested in opening up a restaurant.
That's like a big leap from managing a restaurant to having investors.
Well, I'm sorry. He became my partner. The owner, which was a very close friend and still is, he owned the restaurant. I managed the restaurant. So he wanted to open up another restaurant. Subsequently, my parents had moved to San Diego and kept telling me that there aren't many seafood restaurants down here. You really ought to come down here and check it out. And so I started to come down here. That was in the late 70s. The only thing here was Anthony's seafood restaurant. And so they were pretty right on.
So it's interesting how your parents went from doctor, lawyer to sociologist. Well, maybe restaurateur is as good as sociologist, and he's interested in it. So let's go there. And they were the ones that gave you the unique selling proposition or the angle why a restaurant will do well.
Well, they saw that I wasn't going to be a doctor or lawyer. Okay, so that was not even in the cards. Right. And then I was doing all this restaurant work, and so they got on board with that, and they encouraged me to come down to San Diego.
They also saw that you did the job. You were in those positions. So it's not like you're choosing a field that you didn't know anything about. You learned it from the bottom up.
Pretty much 15 years experience in the restaurant before I did mine.
You had a good idea
my
of how
share
it
of
worked.
dishes, busboy, waiter, bartender, manager, cook, everything I did.
Did you know at the time that it was one of the world's hardest businesses ever to manage and run? Or did you learn that fact?
I don't think I took that in consideration. I mean, it was part of the job.
Probably in your 20s at the time?
I was in my 30s. I was 30 when I opened my place.
Okay.
Looking back, I think I would never do it again. It's too difficult, too risky. But I didn't care at the time because I had so much ambition and so much drive. Failing wasn't a card. It wasn't in the cards. I mean, it was brutal. We worked for 3 years with no days off, morning till night, my partner and I.
That's what you do.
And that's what we did.
First of all, what was the name of the restaurant?
The restaurant was called The Fish Merchant.
And you came up with the name because it's pretty clear about what it is.
Uh-huh.
And that's what you wanted to...
It was in Allied Gardens.
Okay.
It's near La Mesa here in East County, San Diego. Mm-hmm. So we opened in 1980. And for the first months, I mean, we were doing 20 or 30 meals a night. We had no advertising budget. Our advertising budget consisted of us making flyers. Right. And when we weren't working, going out and handing them out or putting them on cars.
Kind of guerrilla marketing, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. But after about 2 years of a grind, I mean, an unbelievable grind, the phone started to ring off the hook. Couldn't figure out what the hell's going on.
Just all of a sudden? Or was it a slow burn?
One day, all of a sudden, the phone was ringing nonstop. And someone called me and said, hey, you got a review in the paper, The Reader from Eleanor Woodmer. And it's a giant spread on how incredible your restaurant is. And from that day on, I went from like 30 meals a day to 300. It was absolutely phenomenal. It took off. I went from like 7 employees to 25 employees.
Let's back up a little bit. So I want to get to the issue of when you're first starting out in goal setting. When you first started, did you say I wanted 30 meals a day or I wanted 40? Did you set goals or did you just try and go and see what happened?
No, I don't think the goals were to pay the bills and make a living.
To get to break-even point.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And so, my partner and I, we not only prepared all the food, fish, salads, the dressings, everything came in the back door. He and I accepted it or didn't accept it, made the food, cut the fish, made the dressings, everything. I don't know even if I had time to think about, we have to do this, we have to do that as far as numbers. It's just started to happen. It was a grind, no days off, from morning to night, literally 7 days a week, until that day when that phone started to ring. And we got
Now,
that.
did you set this interviewer up to come in and
No,
review?
I didn't know she was
She
there.
just did it on her own. She happened to love the food. Thank God.
Yes. And I didn't know she had been there. And I didn't know who it was.
Well, it's a nice way to find out, isn't it?
It
By
was
the
a
phone.
great way to find out. It was a dream.
So how much did it jump?
Typically, in the beginning, we were doing 20 to 30 meals in the beginning of the week, the slower part, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That jumped to 80 to 100 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, Friday got busier. We were doing 200 meals on Thursday, 300 meals on Friday, and a little less on Saturday, and Sunday was about. So it was drastic. I mean, it was a radical change. I mean, there were lines out the door to get into my place.
You couldn't have paid for that. I mean, you couldn't have bought an ad that would do the credibility that a PR piece would do for you.
No, it was a dream. I mean, an absolute dream.
All right, so now all of a sudden you're going with right about break-even point. You're just struggling along and you're working all the time. And boom, now you're over break-even point. You and your partner then, is there goal setting about we want to get bigger than this? We want to stay where we are? What was your future plans at that point?
I think at that point it was all operational issues because we went from 0 to
Right, because
100.
everything's busting at the seam trying to figure out how to do all this.
Exactly.
Right.
More people, more rules, more regulations,
More cost, it sounds like.
more costs.
More costs. When you and your partner were adding to this overhead and adding to cost, who was your policeman? Who was the one that said, no, let's not do that yet. Let's stay profitable. I mean, or did you just both have that?
He and
nature?
I discussed everything and did everything, even recipes. We created the recipes. If they were good, they need to be tweaked. We got something from the clientele, said, hey, you should do this, you should do that. So we were constantly trying it. A lot of it was trial and error.
Sure.
Even though we had the 30 years experience between the two of us, still there was trial and error, and you get feedback from your customers. And you have to listen. They can steer you in the right way.
Well, it seems to me, too, being a restaurant visitor rather than owner, when do you refresh the menu? How often do you have to change a menu out to make people not get tired of it? Did you just figure it out by somebody not buying that dish anymore, you just drop it? Or did you actually consciously say in 6 months we're going to add 3 dishes? Or
Well, we specialized in fresh fish. Every day, my restaurant had 12 to 13 fresh, never frozen varieties of fish. And we had one menu of the fresh fish on each table, and we had a paper menu that had all the salads and soups and shrimp and crab legs and lobster and all that. So in a way, our restaurant was always fresh because the idea was always fresh because we had a changing menu every day that was different. We had,
Because the
white
fish-
sea bass today,
because it was
tomorrow.
seasonal and what you could buy and when it was
available, what you could get.
So it's kind of a natural rotation.
It really was.
So you didn't really have to plan it like a McDonald's, and these people
No.
have to plan these for years and try to do all this.
No, we never really did that because
Well,
every
you
day
had
I
to
never
do
knew
that.
what I was going to have tomorrow until I talked to the fishermen, find out what they were catching so I could order the next day.
I don't want to go bring it down into accounting, but let's talk about P&Ls and balance sheets. And when did you get formalized about your accounting and you really looked at P&Ls and looked at balance sheets, you and your partner?
My partner was an accounting major from USC.
Perfect.
And I mean, it was
Thank you very much.
It was done,
So it was automatic and you were operated from the beginning because he was GAAP.
Absolutely.
Generally accepted.
But it was all
accounting
done by
principles.
hand. I mean, there was no computer. We didn't have any computers at
Of
that
course.
time. Everything was accounted for. Every meal, every pound of fish, every beer, everything we sold was.
Do you remember how many was to-go orders, or do you even have to-go orders back then, or was all of it in?
We did some to-go business, but predominantly it was in-house.
Well, that's the way it was back then. You didn't even think about calling a restaurant and having them deliver food to you.
It was a different
You had
time.
to go there.
It was a different time.
Right.
And it was a very pleasant place. I mean, I have
It had
to
good
admit,
atmosphere.
We had 5 aquariums in it, and they
Oh,
were
cool.
absolutely gorgeous. He and I made all the tables ourselves, painted everything, put everything in. It was a very pleasant, fun, nice place to be. And
Did your aquarium have any fish that they're eating in there? Did they
No,
have
it
the
was all
yellowtail in there?
tropical fish. No,
No, it was all
all
the kind
tropical
you're not
fish.
supposed to eat.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
But people loved the aquariums, and it was really pleasant and really
Well,
nice.
it works with the image of fresh fish. So were there more reviews, or did the word of mouth just keep going about how?
There have been multiple reviews after that. Jack White, I don't know if you remember him. He was a really big name. He let us know he was coming, and he's
did he?
interviewing people while they're sitting down and eating. So that was fantastic. And then there was another one called The Unknown Eater. We didn't really know who that guy was.
There was one of those guys up in L.A. too.
Yeah,
one of those secret critics.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
doesn't show up and secretly says, "I'm eating the food," and I'm
Right.
not telling him I'm here.
Right. Unknown Eater gave us, a great review. So it kept going. I mean, it really kept
Well,
going.
because you had good reviews.
Good reviews, and we had fresh fish, never frozen, and there were no sauces really. It was just real basic, really affordable, and really, really good. I go up near Lake Tahoe on the summers. I have my cabin. I run into people, and we talk about where we were from, and they
Remember going to your restaurant?
going to my restaurant,
That's cool.
and which is pretty amazing because it was really a long time.
Okay, so you've operated with P&Ls and balance sheets and the right way to do that. We're in a mode now where you've grown and you're successful. You've gotten positive reviews. My assumption is you're profitable every month. When did you start investing rather than using the operational accounts?
Well, my partner, he was an accountant. He probably was investing all along, but we at one point had to decide whether or not to increase the size of the restaurant, which we did. We doubled the size of the restaurant.
Physical size?
Physical size. We went
So
from
cost of real estate doubled. Or
the rent doubled.
Well,
But,
that's what I mean, yeah.
the rent doubled. We had 16 tables when we started, and we had a service bar.
You hit the wall. You can only do this much.
Absolutely.
This is when people come. This is how busy it can be. This is how long it takes to turn a table.
Exactly. And so we had to do something. So we went from 16 tables, 35
So it
tables.
wasn't big enough to support what you guys wanted to do out
Not
of your
anymore.
business.
Not after it got busy and there's lines out the door and you're losing people. People don't want to wait.
Oh boy.
So-
that must just drive you insane as an entrepreneur.
very
Seeing
painful.
a piece of revenue, be upset and walk away.
That's right. They
Oh
don't want
my
to wait.
gosh.
And so we had to make that decision. So about 3 or 4 years into it, when things started to get busy, we over doubled the size. We went from 16 tables to 35.
Hindsight, was that a smart move? Should you have done it sooner? Was it a bad move?
It was something that we couldn't have anticipated. We didn't know what was going to happen. It happened. And so we responded.
You're reacting to the market. What
Exactly.
you're doing. I was going to make that point. And nowadays, you see, back then you had reviews that were in papers and you got positive reviews. That's a very important thing. But nowadays with digital, people can put positive reviews out there, but then people all the time go out there with negative reviews. So it's a total issue now about managing your reviews because people now are so aggressive when it comes to online communication.
It's a different world.
I mean, you can ruin a restaurant within one guy or two people if you have a concerted digital campaign, can put a business out of business.
Absolutely. Negative feedback is very bad. Very bad.
Well, at least back then, if you got a bad review, you could at least deal with it. It didn't have the ripple effects of time. You had time back then. Now, if you're not managing your digital footprint, your digital image, it can get away from you so fast. I mean, that's the biggest thing that's changed that I've noticed is speed of communication and speed of referrals or speed of bad news. Like you just said, if you've got a bad review or you got a bad customer out there bad mouthing you, I don't know what the rules are. Someone's like 10 times as bad as somebody that's good.
Yeah.
They tell 10 times as many people or whatever.
It's true. It's very true.
So you're really kind of dependent upon your quality of your food and your menu and
your staff. And what kind of relationship your staff has with the customers. Because good people love to talk about restaurants. If they find a good restaurant, an out of the way small place like we had, and it's really good, they can't wait to tell people about it.
That's true.
And you have to let your staff know how important your relationship is with the customers. The customers are everything. That was probably the hardest part of my job.
You probably learned that when you were shining shoes, that the customer is everything. And if the guy's happy with the shoe shine, you're going to get a bigger tip.
Definitely.
So you learned how important that one customer was early on.
Absolutely. I think one of the hardest things in my business, and we had the 35 employees, is to keep them with that same sentiment about how important your customers are. Because without them, you're nothing. And with them, and the fact that they like to talk about positive experiences, and restaurants in particular, you're doing a good service. I can tell you something that happened. I don't know if you want to bring this up or not. One of my regular customers, and I didn't even know this, was a buyer at Costco. I didn't know him until he came up to me one day, and he said, "Hey, I love this salad dressing. You guys make it here?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I would like you to bring some of it with a couple salads to my office at Costco, and I want to have the buyers taste it."
So now you're going out, when they say stick to the knitting, if you will, in business, and you're sticking to your restaurant, paying for people to work here and to make great food. People come here. This is what they do. Now you're going into a packaged goods business. That's an interesting step out. How did it go?
Oh, my God. I went to his office. I brought the dressing. I made a couple salads. And he said, "I'll be in touch." I went back to the restaurant, doing my thing. And he called me. His name was Adam. He called me and he said, "Hey, they absolutely love this dressing. I would like you to become a customer at Costco. Let's start." There was a Costco in Santee, which is pretty close to the restaurant. He said, "I'd like you to have 6 cases of 12 delivered in 2 weeks at 7:00. And I need someone to demo the product. I need it in this size jar. I want 12 in a case. You have to have labels on them, shrink wraps."
So you had 2 weeks to get all this done, because that's when the delivery date was, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took off my chef's hat, my manager's hat. I put on my management hat, and I went around. Got the labels made, bought the bottles, bought the cases, bought the shrink wraps. I had to tell my staff, which was kind of bad in a way, that I have this order for poppy seed dressing. We make it every day, but we're going to start making it after the shift to go to Costco.
A lot more of it.
Well, 6 cases to start. And we were making this stuff, in little bar blenders, Usually people are making stuff with these giant, 10-gallon blenders. But I didn't have the equipment. But I had the most wonderful kitchen staff. So sure enough, man, that Wednesday night, the night before we have to go, after the shift, had all the cooks come in. We made 6 cases, 72 bottles of poppy seed dressing, 32-ounce bottles, made them in bar blenders, poured it in a siphon.
Yeah.
Filled all the bottles, put the labels on, the shrink wraps and the caps, put them in the cases and put them in my little truck. I took it home, and next morning I delivered it, and then I demoed it that day.
In Costco.
I demoed it, and people loved it. So I didn't know what happened with the sales.
I'm going to stop you right here, because I want to know the thinking behind, I want to go do this now. What was your purpose for going to Costco? Was it to try to get to the next level as far as revenues and money and scale, or what? Was it money that was driving you to go into a different direction and do this, or what was it? Do you remember?
It wasn't money. It was just an avenue to
another avenue to grow,
to be successful, to accomplish something.
And your partner said, "Oh, this is a good idea." He liked it too.
He loved it,
especially since you're doing it all.
I was, but you know what? He did the accounting thing.
Yeah, of course.
It balanced out. Yeah. I got to tell you. Well, I don't want to have to track. I don't want to get back to the dressing, but I had a partner that was the biggest workaholic ever. As hard as I worked and whatever I did, I never felt like I was keeping up with him.
What a great partner. Drives you. Well, not like you weren't going to be driven anyway.
I know,
having
but whatever,
2 of you that are insanely driven.
I know. It was a very weird feeling, but a great thing to have, as opposed to the opposite, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So back to the dressing thing. So I do the demo, and I go back, I work in the restaurant. 2 days later, Adam calls me back. He said, "Mark," it went really well. We sold out in 1 day. He said, the first was 6. I need 12 cases in 2 weeks.
This sounds like it's going in an interesting...
I'm thinking, okay, I can't say no.
I think I've seen this on comedy shows. I think Lucille Ball did something like
yes.
that. There's how many people have done things where,
exactly,
they can't keep up. Okay?
And you can't say no.
Or money. No. Right.
So anyway,
Costco.
okay, so and then I didn't want to buy too many bottles, too many labels, too many of this because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Here we go.
Now, Mark, we need 12 cases in 2 weeks. So I go out, I buy all this crap again, the bottles, the cases, the labels, the this, the that, the caps. And I got to go back to my guys and say,
Tell them
guys,
again.
guess what? We got to do 12 cases this time. But they were great. There we were. We set up a line. Still got our little
Still with the little
bar
blender.
blenders, making all this shit. Phil put it in the cases, put them in my truck, and I delivered it that Thursday. 2 weeks later, same thing.
We out
I'm half
sampling
dead,
still.
but I'm having people try it, and they went back to the restaurant, and I didn't hear from the guy for 3 or 4 days. Sure enough, he called me again. He said, Mark, I need 24 cases. I said, Adam, when do you need it? He said, well, how about 3-4 weeks? I said, Adam, I got to be really honest with you. I need a little more time because my guys are getting burnt out bad. He said, how much time do you need? I said, well, I'd like a month. And then you know what he said to me? We have a co-packer in LA who makes all of our stuff. Go see him. He will make it and deliver it. And all you have to do is bill me. It's like, did I just go to heaven? Are you serious? So sure enough, I went to the co-packer. I brought the recipe. We made it there. I tasted it until it was perfect. And so that 24 cases, I
You
gave
think
it to
you've
them.
solved this one like no problem.
Exactly.
Great.
And then Adam calls me. Okay, so those 24 cases go. They're gone. 2 weeks later, he calls. He says, "We're going to go now. Now you're in Santee. I want you in." There's 3 Costco. There were 3 Costcos. You're in Santee. I want you to move to Santee, Marina, and downtown. And now I need 150 cases.
It's really ramping up now. I guess the good news is people are liking this. It's selling through at Costco.
Big time.
Obviously.
Big time. Well, I got to tell you, I went from the 3 stores to 6 stores to 12 stores to every Costco in California.
How many cases were you doing then? I mean,
500.
Oh my God.
Jim, I was making $30,000 an order.
Profit?
Net profit.
Holy moly.
I mean, it was like, it was crazy. It was insanity. It was insanity.
Yeah.
And it was working perfectly.
So what happened? I mean,
Well, okay, you're probably a Costco customer.
But anyway.
Have you heard from people who go there that they go, to Costco and they get in a habit of buying something and then they go there and it's not there anymore? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard that, yes.
Okay, this went on for close to a year with the 500 case
So
orders.
we're talking about $360,000 in profit that year at $30,000 or whatever, close to that, right?
That's how we paid for the remodel, by the way. So I'm thinking, I'm waiting for my call. He didn't call.
Oh no, he just doesn't call. And you're going, where's my call? When did you think about trying to call him? Or
Of course. I was on his doorstep,
Yeah, right.
on the door.
Yeah.
They transferred him.
Oh, he's gone. He's the one guy that likes this, and he's got
he's
you
the
in
one
it.
guy that was ordering.
Put you in it, yeah.
He's gone and replaced with somebody else.
So you had no idea that might happen.
No. And apparently that's what happens at Costco. Guy gets transferred. You worked with him. And when I first went to his office that first day to deliver that dressing and those salads, every dressing on the planet Earth was on his shelf that everyone has pitched. I'm thinking,
Oh, sure.
I mean, he's not gonna buy from me. I'm just I'm a little Jewish schmuck, I'm going to the fish house. But sure enough, okay, so anyway, we went on, and it was incredible. We remodeled the restaurant, put in a bar, but then I didn't hear from the guy. He got transferred, and that was the end of it.
Did you try to sell the other guy, and the next guy just wouldn't see you, or do you remember?
Yeah, I remember. I tried, and
sorry.
it was like, who are you?
Start over time.
I had to start over, and I just didn't
God.
have the energy to start over.
I can't imagine why. So was there a lot of costs that you had to eat to undo
None.
it?
Zero.
So you actually
I
did it in
never
a way
bought
where
anything. I didn't
where
buy
you-
any equipment.
where you could just stop without hurting your profits.
All I had was some extra bottles and labels. And
So
that's
all it was a lost $360,000 a year in
Roughly,
revenue stream.
yes.
Okay. Wow. What did you learn out of that whole experience that maybe another entrepreneur could take from?
Well, I'm very glad that I didn't set up shop and buy equipment and start producing this stuff myself.
That would be the natural thing.
And not only that, I have 2 friends who did that. The bagel guy. He had a bagel shop here in San Diego.
The bagel guy. Was it called the bagel guy?
No,
No, it's just you call him that. Okay.
I don't remember the name of his restaurant.
Doesn't matter. The bagel guy works.
He went to Costco. He went through the same thing as me, but
He opened up a kitchen.
he opened up a kitchen with all the equipment and the ovens and everything. Same thing happened. No call. And he's sitting there.
Eating all of it.
He ate it all. And there was a jewelry guy too, I know, who did the same thing.
Did you know that? Did you know in your gut to not buy this stuff, or did you just do it because it was cheaper and easier to do it this way first?
I never thought about it because the co-packer, when you're doing food,
You needed it.
You need a co-packer.
You needed him, yeah.
That's the only way to go. And
Right.
if you watch Shark Tank, I don't know if you do.
I do.
A lot of food people come.
Oh, yeah.
And then when they realize, the sharks realize, do you have a co-packer? They say, no, we're making it in our kitchen. Well, hello.
Bye.
So then that was a pretty incredible experience.
Wow. So
I had
got about
another
50
very amazing thing happen. I don't know if you want me to tell you these things.
So now you're at a different level with the restaurant?
Well, I'm going to go back a little before the dressing thing happened.
Okay.
You know, every year San Diego has a lottery for liquor licenses.
Oh, really?
Yes.
The city allows
San
only
Diego
X
City,
amount?
yeah.
Okay.
When we opened our restaurant, we just had a service bar where we had our beer and wine.
So that's
and
what a
there's no
service bar
customers
is, beer and
sitting
wine?
there. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know anything about the bar business. type of
Right.
thing.
We served beer and wine, but we had a service bar where the servers, they'd take an order and they needed a beer or wine. They came to the service bar, and that's where we gave the beer or the wine to the server, and the server gave it to the customer. Well, a liquor license cost at that time in the 80s $75,000.
There's a hard liquor license?
A hard liquor license. So we couldn't afford it.
Right.
But every year, San Diego gives out 25 liquor licenses via a lottery that they have, a raffle. For $6,000, you put down $6,000,
You might get it.
and if you
The city
get chosen-
subsidized it? Is that how it worked?
No, they give you a new liquor license where you can now sell hard liquor.
Cool.
Okay,
All right.
so we entered the lottery.
Try that.
I never won anything in my life. We got a liquor license for $6,000 that was immediately worth $75,000.
Could you resell it?
Of course.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you could with those.
I don't know how long,
Yeah, I was just curious.
but I had no intention of selling it.
Well,
because,
God, no. You're going to make a lot of money
because
with it.
My partner and I were bartenders. We worked bar. We knew the bar business better than anything ever. With the money that was coming in now from the dressing business, we remodeled our restaurant and put in a beautiful bar.
Oh, cool.
And the revenue jumped big time.
Oh, yeah. I
Anytime-
understand there's high margins in hard
There's high
liquor.
margins there, and the fact that of a remodel, freshening things up, usually brings people out. I don't really understand that. And the guys that told us that this is what's going to happen. You're going to remodel it, and your business is going to jump 25%. I thought it was sales talk,
Sure.
but it happened. We remodeled it. We put in a beautiful bar, got rid of the tables that we built, put in beautiful tables, big booths, and it just changed. Everything changed.
So you had a lot of money that you had gotten off of profits, and then you had the money to be able to do all this. That sounds like
The dressing helped a lot. That was another really amazing thing that happened to us that I, would never expect to have happened, but it happened.
It's amazing how much in entrepreneurship people don't expect, and it's reactive business. You react to a customer, you react to a review, you react,
Sure.
There is obviously a lot of planning to go, but then there's an awful lot of, we better react the right way. This is
Absolutely.
where the market's going. This is whatever it is, whether you have dropping in people coming by or whatever it might be. So now you're expanding, you're getting more, you got money coming in from the bar. You guys are now bartenders.
Now we're watching the bartenders so they're not stealing from us. We're on the other side of the curtain here.
That's right.
And trust me, it did happen.
Well, what my understanding is, anywhere you do have ability to have shrinkage, you will. And when there's cash being handled in any way, shape, or form, you're going to increase that a lot.
Absolutely.
And anytime you're pouring something that liquid gold, did you monitor it by amount of alcohol being gone, size of drinks? How did you monitor
the same as the food costs? You want your food cost to be a certain percentage It's a little higher with fresh fish because it costs so much. But you're running your books every day and you're running your food costs. If the food costs are higher than they should be, then there's a leak somewhere. And you have to find out
inflation,
where it is.
whatever, you just immediately pass that along because there is natural inflation and everything, especially fresh fish. Sure, sometimes fish will go out of because it's rare, and all of a sudden now it gets really high. Did you just pass that margin along to people?
With fresh fish, yes.
Yeah, of course you can.
But let's get back to the bar as far as that, because you're getting attrition of people stealing from you. But we're also on a daily, monthly basis doing inventory. I know how much liquor I sold.
Right.
I know how much liquor I bought.
And you know how much is in each drink.
That's right.
Which you trained the bartender to do.
Exactly.
But he probably poured a little heavy drink because that's always good for business, or is it not? Is that I just hear that for a rumor?
Yeah, it's part of the game, and I anticipate that. But I didn't tolerate stealing from me much. That was where I drew the line.
I bet.
Right.
So when you caught somebody, you immediately fired them?
If I caught them, yes.
And if you just suspected them but didn't have the proof, what did you do?
Well, I had to have the proof.
Well, of course you do.
I had to have the proof. But like I said, we have our numbers, our accounting going, so I knew exactly how the bar costs were. If they were too high, I knew what was going on.
You know who was working then.
If I was ordering, even the computerized register system showed you what exact liquors you are selling. Now, if you are only selling 1 or 2 drinks of one type of liquor, but you're buying all these bottles of this one thing, but you're not really selling it, there's a leak in your system. In other words, someone's giving it away. Giving it
to friends, basically.
Giving it to his friends or customers or
whoever. Not to you.
Right. I know what type of liquor they're stealing from me. So I'll go at night, I'll mark the bottle. If they didn't sell any that night, but the register said he rang up 3 or 4 of them, well, something's wrong.
So you can catch them cheating the customer.
Yeah. You can if you're.
Yeah, the other side. So that's another way. I didn't even think of it. I guess I'm not a good criminal. Didn't even think about how you could do that from that standpoint. Right. But you could.
You could. And plus, I have friends who I hire as spotters. If I suspect somebody doing something, he'll come in and sit at the bar for a couple hours and see what's going on. So we did that.
Kind of like
too.
management by walking around.
Yeah.
Got to have eyes and ears there all the time, marking the bottles, doing the thing, paying attention. Do the employees that are thinking of stealing that careful to pay attention to their trail?
Some yes, some no. I mean,
you could catch them pretty easy.
No, I don't think it was easy. And it was, restaurant business is hard enough to buy food.
Yeah. And every day and every night you have stuff that you have to throw away.
Exactly. And there's waste and all that. But then to have some people steal from you is just horrible on top of it. But it happens, and I expected it. But the places where I found it, never in a million years would I have thought that those people would have done it to us. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think I've learned over the years too that you can't ever tell when somebody's going to do something.
No.
You think you know them well, but everybody's got a greed gene, if you will, that there's a price for everybody. Yeah. So if they have a dramatic financial problem at home or whatever, oftentimes that's what they'll do.
Yeah, and it was hard. I mean, you're making me kind of go back because we had to fire some people I really personally liked. But the business was first, and I put it first. I can't.
It had to be.
Just had to be.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the peak of the restaurant, and then when you decided to get out. What was your thinking about the exit strategy for yourself?
I did end up selling, but it wasn't something I had to put on the market or anything like that. A guy who I hired. This is an interesting story. If you want me to go,
I do.
I hired a guy. I must have interviewed hundreds of people, and most of them were state college. Most of them came in shorts and tank tops and disheveled. I hired this guy named Joe. He came in. He was the only guy ever. He wore a suit to the interview.
Not like San Diego normal.
No, super respectful, super nice, super good guy, and I really, really, really liked him. So I looked at his application, and I said, Joe, you got great application here, but there's a period of 2 years missing here. What happened in those 2 years? He said, Mark, I got to be honest with you. I served 2 years in the penitentiary. I said, for what? He said, for money laundering and fraud.
That ought to give you a little pause.
Yeah, I mean,
Since you're just talking about getting rid of people that steal from you.
exactly. Good combination, right?
Right now, I got a guy direct from the pen.
I know.
Who's already been convicted of it.
I know, and I was so
But I
torn.
really liked the guy.
I liked him. So I told him, I said, Joe, I got to really think this out. I will get back to you.
Yeah.
I went to my partner and I told him what I just told you. I interviewed this guy. I really, really like him, but he served time in the big house. Okay.
For stealing money from people.
And I said, I just have a really good feeling about him. And my partner said, hey, go with your gut. You know, you've been here long enough.
Well,
so I hired this guy,
proved
Joe.
yourself with your partner by now.
This guy turned out to be the absolute best employee I'd ever had.
Because he wanted it so bad. From the penitentiary, do you think?
No,
No?
It was a quality that he had that only one other guy I could ever remember had the ability to approach a table and have a relationship and make those people feel really special. And after a while, I would say 3/4 of the people that came through the door asked for Joe because he made him feel good. And I mean, that was a dream for me. And he was a waiter. He did a great job. And he was on time.
Are you feeling, at this point in time with your relationship with him, are you still thinking about the penitentiary? Or
No.
he's now earned himself out of that already? In the sense that you see that he's doing different things. So that didn't even enter your mind
Not
anymore.
anymore. I mean,
Okay.
you
He
know,
proved himself.
He proved himself.
I got it.
He told me he made a mistake.
Obviously, and he knows it better than anybody. He's the one that spent 2 years in the slammer.
Right. So I took the risk, but it turned out to be, well, this story gets better.
I'm glad.
So
It's good now, but I mean,
So I hired him as a waiter, and then I made him a manager. He became a manager of the day shift because there was 2 shifts. And so he did that, and he did a great job. And now we're going on like a year, 2 years, and he starts managing during the day and waiting tables at night as well. And then he became the night manager, and he was absolutely incredible. I mean, on time, pressed, work ethic. The people loved him. He was like a dream employee. And then he got married, and he married a lady who had a relatively wealthy father. And this guy, Joe, started asking me if I would sell the business to him. And I was 57, had no intention of selling. And I said, no, Joe, I'm too young. I'm not ready. This went on for...
even though you're working as hard as you were working, you still were...
Well, I had a manager now. I mean,
Well, it's better now.
it was better.
Right.
And I said, Joe, I'm just not ready for it. So this went on for months and months and months and months. He's starting to ask me, my father-in-law really wants to buy the business. Would you consider? Would you consider? Would you consider? Well, 6 months went by, and I said, Joe, let's sit down. I want to talk to you. And so
What was your decision then? That 6
I
months.
was just ready.
You just hit,
I was just
because
ready.
he planted the seed. You're starting to think about
Exactly.
whether it's time or not.
And what else
And
I
then-
could do.
And then you realized over that 6 months that maybe this is a good step.
And it may not have ever happen again. So we sat down on table 25. I remember specifically. I said, Joe, I'm interested. I'll talk to you guys now, but I have a number of what I want to sell the business.
How did you come up with the number?
I had a number from the day that I started.
Was it a number of times the multiple? Was it a number times the net? Was it a number times the gross? Or did you just have a number?
It was a combination of everything you just said.
Okay.
And so I told him what I wanted. And he said, okay, I'm going to go talk to my father-in-law. I said, okay, let me know. Came back.
Were there terms too at that point, or was it just a number at that point?
Just a number.
Okay.
And so he came back and he said, okay. There was no negotiation. He didn't say, well, we'll give you this again. No. He just said, okay. They accepted my price.
To me, in history of doing deals, and when you find a partner that's respectful enough to respect your price, when that team didn't want to challenge you, they respected you. They respected the value of it.
And the business was doing very well.
Right. It wasn't like you priced it to, it didn't work for them. You
Exactly.
priced it what you wanted, but it also worked for them. And why? I'm a big believer in that. Why haggle when you don't need to haggle? If you think it's fair, then do the deal because you want the person to do the deal. You want them to feel good
Right.
and work.
Okay.
So now how did the terms come down?
Well, 2 weeks later, he came back. He wanted to talk to me again. He said, My father-in-law wants to buy the building. I owned the building.
Oh, so you just talked about the business itself, not the building.
Well,
You tell
that's
this.
all he said in the beginning. I want to buy
Gotcha.
the business.
Right. I gotcha.
And they're two different entities.
Sure.
Right. So
Tell you business was an LLC and the other was a corporation or whatever. They were different legal
yeah,
entities.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
And so he came back a couple
So there's
weeks
two
later.
deals to do, not just one.
Yeah. He came back. He said, my father-in-law wants to buy the building as well. And I said, well, Joe, I don't really know what the building is worth. I had no intention of selling it. It was my retirement plan. But I'll go out there and do some homework and I'll get back to you. I met him again a couple of weeks later. I went out, talked to some brokers, and we sat on table 25. I said, Joe, this is what I want for the building and the business. He said, let me go talk to my father-in-law. I said, okay, let me know. They came back. They said, yes.
Was it an all cash deal? I mean, did they pay you all a lump sum or was it over time? I mean,
yeah, there was in the beginning, they wanted to put a certain amount down and
Sure.
pay us out.
out of the flow.
Out
Sure.
of the flow.
That would be normal.
That would be normal. But I started losing sleep because they weren't me and they weren't my partner as far as running the business. Yes, it looks easy, and yes, it's running well, but I'm not willing to take that risk. I end up
Somebody else
getting it back.
as committed to this as I was.
That's right.
That's going to make my long-term debt that they're going to pay me
Exactly.
not too risky.
So that was this time. I said, Joe, I need to talk to you guys. I'm not carrying any paper. It has to be a cash out deal or I'm not interested.
So the price was okay.
Price is fine.
Now you come back with the ultimate terms, which is all cash, which is pretty ballsy, but understandable. And they took a few days and came back and said what?
Yes.
That's it.
That was
Didn't
it.
even negotiate, didn't try, didn't do anything.
Nothing. Went
See?
into escrow. I told them,
I would say that you priced it exactly right. If you could take a all cash deal and it's still okay and you wanted to pay it off over time, I mean, your pricing was right. So he just took the risk on his side, which is where you wanted to push it, which is taking it off of you because you're not in it anymore.
right.
And now it's on to him. Of course, it's on to him because it's all cash.
Right. The father-in-law did come in during this time, sat in the office. We did business. He wanted to see us counting the money, and he wanted to make sure everything was legitimate that we had told him as far as what we were doing.
So that's his due diligence. He came in and watched.
Absolutely.
That's a great due diligence rather than just looking at papers, looking at financials, looking at backgrounds, looking at all that kind of crap.
He wanted to see.
He came in and watched it happen.
That's right.
Smart man.
Smart man. I was honest with them, and I want to be honest with you two guys. I think you need some training. You may not think so, but I think you need training. You know, as good as you think you are, I think you need 30 days at least of training here with us, my partner and I, and they declined it. They said, no, we think we know enough. Okay, it's up to you. So the escrow was 30 days, and I remember
Closed
that day.
normally, and you were happy, unhappy.
I walked
What?
away. I opened the back door, and that was the last time I.
How much
ever saw it.
regret did you have after the fact that you had gotten rid of it? Any? Had it run the full course in your mind, your emotions?
I was ready. It was one of the happiest, other than my marriage, it was probably
Right.
the happiest day of my life.
Well, yeah, to cash out, an entrepreneur that can grow business from nothing and all the way up to here and into a building and a restaurant and selling out at your price and at your terms, all cash. How much more successful can an entrepreneur be? That's exactly what you're supposed to do, is get to a point where you can cash out and take the money and do something.
Yeah.
Most businesses don't ever get there. They get to a point where they maybe can, or they go away, or they, depending on how long they're there, right?
Exactly.
To
Yeah.
see it go full cycle, congratulations, by the way. That's really hard to do.
It's hard to do, but we were talking about almost 30 years of my life. Yeah, that was wonderful.
So you're still an entrepreneur? You're doing real estate deals and that kind of stuff rather than restaurants?
Am I?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're still doing the entrepreneurial thing, but it's a different style now, and it's more comfortable what you're doing, which is
Yes.
commercial real estate and
Yes.
things that are stable and
Yes, I have.
real assets and
Yes.
aren't going to go away because of Bitcoin and all of that.
Yes.
Right.
I'm doing it because I enjoy it. I mean, I don't know what I would do if I didn't.
The challenge
wasn't
is
able to do
everything,
that.
right? Is it the challenge for you? And it is for me. I mean, I'll go to a certain point where if I'm not challenged anymore, I'm bored. I want to do something else. That's how I can look back at my long time entrepreneurial stuff is it got successful and I sold it but I was done with it. My attention span is kind of like a gnat, 10 or 15 years. And then it's like,
I can't really explain it. I don't know if it's the same ambition. It must be some of the same ambition that put me in that restaurant. In looking back, would I ever do that again? No. I mean, it was so risky, and it was the hours and the life. It was crazy. But the ambition,
So it's interesting how you can look at risk as you get older, and you can quantify it, and you can see it coming, and you know how much it is and where it is. And it's interesting how when you got entrepreneurial blinders on or entrepreneur glasses, and you're driven to do it. I don't remember risk ever coming into my brain during any of that. Now you can look back on it and see how risky it was. But At the time, did you unconsciously say this is risky?
Never.
No.
Never.
Is it the youthfulness? Is it the 20s and 30s where you feel like you can accomplish anything?
I think it's youth, I guess. I would have literally slept every day at that restaurant to make it be successful, whatever I had to do. And it didn't bother me at all. But now looking back, I'm thinking that was pretty ballsy.
Every one of those moves, going through all of them, the jumps on everything from the salad dressing to the bar, every one was a pretty risky jump. Because you could have doubled the size, and if you got a couple of bad reviews and all of a sudden that doesn't happen, it could go the other way.
That's right.
One bad chef could have taken you the wrong. Couple of bad pieces of fish, people got sick. I mean, any number of weird things that could just happen.
And does. In that industry, it happens.
Sure it does.
It happens. On a sadder note, I don't know if you want me to say this, but I can tell you what happened to Joe. Okay, that was 2007. Do you remember what happened in 2008, 9, and 10?
Yes.
We had the Great Recession.
We did.
I had told Joe, I know you don't think you need the training, but whatever you do, don't raise the prices. Don't change what's successful.
Your value proposition to your customer base.
Well, he didn't listen. He raised the prices and people started talking. Customers were calling me at home. Mark, this guy's upping the prices and he's making changes. And I said,
I'm out. Sorry.
I'm home and I don't own it anymore. But anyway, he lost the business.
Meaning it went under?
It went under. And
Wow.
he got hit with, the Great Recession,
Sure.
him raising the prices, and his not being the greatest restaurant guy. Not only he lost the business, he lost the building too.
Whoa, how do you lose the building? Do you just stop paying rent on it? Then you just don't pay? You didn't even pay?
Loan.
They took a mortgage out on the building.
They couldn't pay it and they lost it.
So the dad that had all this money didn't have enough, did he?
Well, I think he had enough of his son-in-law.
Well, okay, fair enough. Oh man,
It's really sad, and it
it's
breaks
sad,
my
but
heart.
you know what? I'll bet it did because you put so much emotion and history into making it happen, and just the fact your customers are calling you at home and they had your home number, and that was the relationship they had. Mm-hmm. So just losing the owner's not here anymore. That has a lot of things to do with why it failed too. Once they realized that you were out, you weren't there anymore.
Right.
And
When
they
people
saw
see
the
changes.
Then they see the changes, and that's it. It's amazing how sensitive a value proposition is from a relationship standpoint or a cost standpoint. So the Great Recession hit, so the prices were too high. I mean, just two little things. I don't know the guy that are there anymore. I used to know the owner.
Exactly.
So I guess you did well as an entrepreneur to be able to completely cash out both the building and the business.
That was a good decision.
Hindsight. But you made it over that 6 months where you said you weren't sure you were ready, but then over 6 months of thinking about it, you went back to him and said, yeah, I am ready. So there was something there where you were looking at the future going.
Well, I had been there 27 years and nobody ever made an offer like that. I had this, I'm 57. Do I want to be...
Maybe too young, but maybe not. Maybe I should cash out at this point.
So I just went
Well,
for
you
it.
did. You see, you did at that point. You were a little bit older. You did feel, and you could see some risk in the future. Because nothing stays the same forever.
No.
Even restaurants, a great restaurant has a lifespan where it stops. So you probably saw that deep in your, psyche at some point, will this continue? Wow, this is fascinating stuff, man. So are you happier now that you're not doing a restaurant and you can control your time a little bit more, or do you like your entrepreneurial stuff now? You're getting challenged enough?
Everything's is good. I mean, if I have misgivings about getting out of that business or that restaurant at that time, it was because of some of my relationship with some of the employees. I really missed them very much, and I really liked some of the employees so much. And that was the hardest
hard
part
for
for
you.
me.
Wow, interesting.
Because I would never saw them again. I walked out the door, and
Well, the fact that you were that close with your employees says an awful lot about why the employees did a good job for you. You know what I mean? They're committed because you were committed as friends. So that will help. And it doesn't usually happen when employees and owners don't treat their employees typically like that, and to become that close.
I'm going to clarify that a little bit. Most of these people were kitchen guys who I became very friendly and very close to. The servers, most of them went to college. It was a part-time job. They were there 3 or 4 years.
But the back room was there for all the time.
They were there full time, and that was their career. My one regret was not being able to go to the work and talk to them in Spanish every day.
Do you have to have a regret? That's a pretty minor one.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mark, this has been a fascinating experience looking at your business. And is there any 1 or 2 things that you could tell the audience about being an entrepreneur, or go for it if you feel like it, or anything?
Well, I do want to say one thing. I don't know if my partner will ever see this, but I do want to say that he was the most amazing worker on the planet Earth. And I was so blessed to have someone like that, always doing more and more and more than I could ever do.
Did he want out at the same time you did? Or how did that work? Or you just go to him and say, listen, this is what's happening. And during that 6 months, both of you talked about it.
Yep.
And he was ready enough to go along with it.
I mean, everything we did pretty much, we talked about. And if there ever was a problem, we would bring in a third person and run it by him.
Well, that's really smart, because, one thing that I think people in business don't do enough, they think that when they have an emotional decision to make, they have to realize that it's an emotional decision. And if you have a partner who's emotional and you're emotional, the only way to get a third-party review that's not emotional is objective, outside, not in your shoes, with a different perspective.
Right. And where I found that, where we had a problem, we had no advertising background. We knew everything about the restaurant, how to work it, but we never did any advertising. So we were beating each other up on the best way to do it. And so we actually hired a person to sit down, and we'd meet with that person and let them tell us, the expertise on how to deal with that. And it worked really well. And it took the pressure off of he and I, batting heads.
Well, you almost have to have a 3-way or a 5-way or some way to have it. I went through that early on with a business where we had 5 owners, and we were bound to determine, we're in our 20s, we had bound to determine, we're going to have a unanimous decision on everything we do. And that worked great until the business got to about $1 million in sales, and everything was slowing down because nobody could make any decisions because we were up there beating our heads against the wall. It took us forever to realize, guys, it doesn't need to be unanimous.
Right.
It needs to be thought through and objective.
Exactly.
But those are things you learn.
Yeah, well, that's a good
over
thing.
Time.
And I just looking back, if somebody has an idea, I say go for it.
Would you say the same thing about the restaurant business? If somebody says, "I want to do a restaurant," would you try to talk them out of it, or would you?
I wouldn't. Well, this is a different world. Okay, the 80s and 90s.
It's a completely different world.
Right.
Now.
I mean, I've never had any masks. No one was wearing in my.
Well, I mean, look at the amount of food a restaurant will deliver now versus in store sitting.
Absolutely.
The whole model is completely shifted.
Completely changed. Yeah.
You don't need a big space with lots of, because people want the food and they want it delivered to themselves.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Not that can't be successful.
And it is,
be a
because
successful business now.
One of my silent partner, he still has a restaurant, and they had to close down the dining because they couldn't have any diners during COVID inside. But now he's doing to-go business times 10, times 20 with only 4 people as opposed to 24 people.
So
working.
the actual model of a business model looks a lot better now, actually.
Well, for him,
you can offload the delivery to Uber or whatever, Uber Eats or whatever.
He did it, and he said the labor cost was great because I don't have a whole staff anymore. But that ended. Now he's back to full staff. But he got through it for that reason.
So when you say a silent partner, was he an investor in your original thing, or just
he owned a restaurant that I was managing with my partner, and the guy that owned it said, "Hey, let's do another one in San Diego." So my partner, he stayed there, and his place is called Stanley's. It's very successful. And then we went down and opened the Fish Merchant.
Stanley's is still around?
Stanley's is still doing great.
Where is that?
I believe in Van Nuys.
Oh, okay, up in L.A.
Yeah.
What kind of restaurant is it?
California cuisine, very successful. He's done really well.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
So he obviously made the transition from COVID to new restaurant style without any trouble.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's hard.
It is very hard. He's made some incredible changes, and he's still doing really well.
Well, thanks for your time and coming in here. I know everybody's going to love some of these stories, and they're going to learn from your stories. Maybe not necessarily what you should do, but sometimes maybe what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what you shouldn't do will save you an awful lot of heartache, a lot of time, and maybe a lot of money. So listen up. Thank Mark for being here. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
And we love to have you on Entrepreneur Success Stories. Thank you, Mark.
All right. I hope it works out.
You have a good one.
All right.
Bye. Look, he's moving out. I like people that start moving off camera before they're even out of all right, I'm done. I'm out of here.